Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to our regularly scheduled communion this morning, or this afternoon. It's um, so we're gonna get started with our daily prayer, and then we will proceed into the roll call for the day, and then we will hear a message of words of wisdom from our Nasibidi. So can everyone please join me in our prayer? We begin by saying, Ama tu impanatir. Sauek tuamentin panatir, audu auma, kedi pa heru. The translation is give yourself to Netter daily, keep yourself for Netter daily, and do it tomorrow as you do it today. We give homage to the Creator, who is like our Father and who is like our Mother, who is everything that we can perceive and everything that we cannot perceive, who is everything yet is no thing, who comes to us in the form of the Neteru Ra, who is the light of the heavens, light of the inner planes, as well as the light of our lives, who shines the light for us on the path of Ma'ati, which is the path of truth, justice, righteousness, and harmonious balance, who comes to us in the form of the light of vitality, giving us the strength and the endurance to live and act upon that which we know to be true. Homage to you, the one who shines in and through us as a beacon of light for those who are blind to the facts of their place, their position, and their responsibility in the divine scheme of things. May we be Ma'akiru, true of thought, word, and deed, to our highest reality, and in the moments of crises, in the dark nights of the soul, when it appears that everyone and everything else has let us down, so it is, and so shall it be. Amen Ma'at. Ma'akiru. All right, everybody. Again, dua for joining us. I saw already quite a few of you chiming in about where it is that you're joining us from. So we're going to dive into this roll call. We want to know who is on the line with us and where you guys are watching from. I know that I saw London, UK in the building already, Atlanta, Georgia in the building. Of course, Center of the Universe, Brooklyn, New York is in the building. Philadelphia is here. Duanetta.
He was early with the roll call.
Yeah.
Go back.
Oh, excuse me. Lafayette, Louisiana is here. Phoenix, Arizona is here. Yeah, Duanetta. Yes, yeah. They did not wait for the roll call. They got it in early. Edmond, Oklahoma is here. Cleveland, Ohio is here. We got Richmond, Virginia here. Newcastle, Delaware here. And Camden by way of Philadelphia, Oaktown, California, Orlando, Florida, okay. Center of the Universe, Miami, Poughkeepsie, New York, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Yes, Duanete. Yes.
So Miami took over from Brooklyn.
Yeah, Duanete. I guess that's it. I guess we don't have nobody else on with us. Oh my goodness. All right.
I guess
The Bronx is here. Uncle my son King. Good to see you. Yes. 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 Newark, New Jersey. Boston, Massachusetts, originally from the island of Cabo Verde. Nice. Nice. Humble, Texas. Duaneta. Yes. Yes. Payne Street. I don't know what city that's in, but thank you for joining us on Payne Street.
Payne Street set.
To
Anessa. I guess it's important that we were supposed to know.
We were supposed to know. St. Louis, Missouri is here. Do Anessa, give thanks, give thanks. Yes.
Okay. All right, so before we get into anything, I got a message before the message, and I want to say, because there's a lot of things going on in the world today. It's very hectic. It's very volatile times that we're living in. So I want to say this word to you all first, that please protect your children and fortify your children. Now, if you can, try to enroll your children into some type of self-defense program and commit to that anywhere between a year and 3 years. We need self-defense programmed into the muscle memory of the children, because you can't just take a day workshop or a couple weeks workshop, because as martial artists, we say you'll learn just enough to get yourself killed. So now, it's the imperative of all adults to naturally want to protect the youth and the children. So we're not just talking about the toddlers, we're talking about the adolescents, we're talking about the teens. It's in our nature to want to protect them. It's in our nature to want to spiritually protect them. But there comes a time in this life where they have to learn to protect themselves. Now, secondly, I say to the women also, the women need to enroll in self defense along with the children. Because the day and time that we're living in, we're seeing black men being murdered by police enforcement brutally right in front of our eyes on the TV. And if they're not being murdered, we're still seeing footage of black men that just being brutalized for apparently looking like oftentimes no apparent reason by law enforcement. And why do I say that? At the same time, we're seeing that the brothers are being killed and brutalized by the police. At the same time, it is our women and our children that are being abducted by unknown and sometimes known assailants. All we have is each other, so we all have to start protecting and fortifying ourselves with one another. Like Wab Majudi Ra, his friend Sharif, his friend and comrade and brothers in arms, his daughter, he reported last communion that his daughter was abducted, and unfortunately they found her and she was murdered. That struck a negative chord within me because I know the brother also. I can't say that we're friends, but I know the brother also. We go back almost 20 years ago. We were renting the same space. He was part of the Black Panther Party, and we had a martial arts class, and we were renting the same space. They were in the other room, and we were cross path many times over the years. And actually, before the COVID came down, I saw the brother at a Kwanzaa, and he had his children with him, and the children loved him. They was all laying on him and things like that, and I thought that was a good vibe. You rarely see the fathers with their children and the fathers and the children showing affection to one another. So that's my memory of the brother. Now, just several days after Majudi Rob mentioned to us that his daughter got abducted, I noticed online during the week there's a brother named Yames from the Shrine of Ma'at, and I think it was his niece got abducted that same week. So my point is, it's getting closer and closer to home. Is we can't act like it's isolated incidences. So we're all being affected by it one way or another, directly or indirectly, sort of like this COVID virus going on. So we have to fortify ourselves. And I I have to mention things like this because spiritual people often get accused of not addressing current things that's relevant to what we're going through in our community. And I feel like that puts us in a strange position because we, often as spiritualists and metaphysicians, um, they it's just like it's no satisfying people. So when we talk about spirituality, eventually people be like, why are you just talking about the spooky spiritual stuff? Why aren't you talking about the things that's going on in the community? And then we start speaking about some of the things that go on in the community, and then some people be like, I didn't come here to learn about all that other stuff. I came here to learn about my spirituality. So in my opinion, I believe in the past year or so and some change, I don't know if you agree, that we were very present with our advice and our counsel to the community throughout the COVID virus. Put a one in the chat if you agree with that. Through the COVID process, we were very present with our counsel and our advice. If you all remember, we actually created another program called the Crook and the Flail, so we could be present right in the thick of it when everyone was unsure, when there was all types of conspiracy theories going around, when we didn't know if COVID was some type of plan, or was it 5G, or was COVID, was any of it real? We didn't have enough information to verify or confirm. And as far as I'm concerned, still to this day, we don't really have any information to verify or confirm, but all we know is the effects of whatever these things are, it's actually affecting people, and people are clearly dying. What did we do? We did not feed into the conspiracy theory, but this is what people were talking about. How can we be spiritualists and leaders and teachers if we don't deal with what's on the minds of the people? And what was on the minds of the people was that COVID and the so-called 5G radiation, and how it was affecting people. So we had to address it from a spiritualist, comedic perspective, and a view on our thoughts about how we are supposed to handle ourselves in the situation. That's what it was that we were doing. And I know some people say, oh, but it's all just talk. We need to see you do this and this. And like, no, you don't need to see me or us do anything. As an adult, I reveal what I want to reveal to you, and you have to deal with what I choose to let you see me do. And far as talk is concerned, when we go back to the text, whether it's the Bible or whether it's the book of knowing the evolutions of Ra, it said in the beginning was the word. So yes, there has to be talk. There has to be a lot of talk. With the talk, we exchange ideas. With the talk, we establish ideas. We have to be on the same page before you just go out there and try to take action. So all of that's necessary. So what did we do throughout that process? We educated people. We educated people on the human immune system. I don't know if y'all remember that. We had a very intensive class on or talk about the human immune system and how to prepare the immune system if you were to contact and contract the virus, because there is no cure for it, never was a cure for it, but you could more readily prepare your body for it if it is to come in contact with that virus. I know they said that the survival rate is what, 97% or something like that. So with the things that we were teaching and explaining, we could increase the 97 to 98 or 99. So we were doing the responsible thing by educating people about what they could do immediately, what frame of mind could benefit them to navigate themselves and their consciousness through this crisis. Then what else? The 5G. We also gave food recommendations if there was a such thing as radiation poison going on. What else happened? The George Floyd thing, when people were mad as heck. And I know some people thought us as spiritualists were going to tell them, oh, everybody calm down. No, we're going to pray and let Jesus handle it. We're going to let Asar handle it. We're going to let the ancestors handle it. No, we didn't say that. We said we totally understand why you're upset. And that was when that happened. That's what was called justified anger. We hold a lot of emotions as a people, and we're oftentimes looking for a platform to have justified anger, and that was one of those times where our people were in their right to be incensed with anger. So what did we say? We didn't say don't be upset. We said, okay, if that's what you want to do, if you want to go do that, call us up and let us have a discussion about what you could do to spiritually fortify yourself if you are going to participate in that, because it is and it was and it always will be a spiritual war going on. So as spiritualists, when you come to this platform, we deal with primary causes. Primary causes is first causes. We deal with ideas. Now your ideas influence your behavior. Now your behavior influences how you act, and your actions eventually produces effects. So we're talking about causes and effects. So we study the causes and effects. So as spiritualists, as metaphysicians, we deal with your inward parts. We always start with there. So to address something solely on the physical goes against the law of nature and the laws of creation as far as we're concerned. So I just wanted to start by just addressing that. We just have to be more vigilant. We have to be more mindful of our surroundings and our environment. Same too with the black men. The police are on the hunt. They're hunting us. So we have to be always conscientious of how we're conducting ourselves, and you almost got to expect it. So if they're hunting us, then we're not animals, then you need to be on your warrior thing. So the men need to enroll in some self-defense also. Everybody needs to be enrolled in self-defense. It's literally like Pac, it's us against the world at this point. So now, what I want to deal with today is I've been trying to deal with for the past two communions. It was about this thing called acedia. Acedia, I said, is what they call boredom or spiritual fatigue. And when it comes to fatigue or tiredness, there's nobody on the planet that's probably can't be nobody on the planet that's more tired than black folks. Dealing with police brutality, racism keeps being in our face, going underground and coming back, resurfacing, and it gets tiring after a while. So now, after all that and through all that, when you come to your spirituality and you have teachers and leaders telling you to slow down or quiet down, sometimes that can agitate you because social media got us moving so fast. Everything is at the our fingertips, and social media has us moving so fast. So when we're told to slow it down, slowing down actually tends to agitate a lot of people. And when they slow it down, they realize how tired they actually are. Because you might have thought you had energy, you might have thought you had energy to be on your grind or on your hustle, only to find out that you were wired, that you didn't really have energy, that you were wired. What you were doing, you was being stimulated. You were being stimulated, kind of like poking a horse with a pin, like a needle, and the horse gets up and moves. You didn't give the horse any energy, you actually stimulated the horse. And so we have a lot of stimulants in our environment. Social media is a stimulant. TV is a stimulant. Everything that we're doing is stimulating us in some way. So when you get back to your culture, and your culture tells you to slow it down. So when you take away all the distractions and the stimulants, then you have to deal with this thing called acedia, which is boredom or spiritual fatigue of having to do the same thing over and over. We have to deal with redundancy. Now, the last two sessions, I had told you we had went through a discourse about the conflict and the contrast between us and the scholastic community, and I said that the reason that they attack us periodically is because they're bored. They done discussed things so many times over the past 10 years that they're tired of discussing things with one another. So for whatever reason, they decide that they want to poke at us every now and then. And there's another brother out here poking at us again, but I'm not going to get into that this time. So what I said is, I said the scholars are bored. I said the scholars is a constructive criticism. I said many of the scholars lack vision. I hope you remember that. I said they lack vision. I feel like what's happening now in our community is many of the scholars are just studying just to study. And if anything more than that, they're studying just to teach each other or teach others. And no one is really studying for utility, how to use it. So now, conversely, they accuse us of making things up. And that's necessarily not an insult. So as we're spiritualists, as spiritualists and metaphysicians, we have strong imaginations. If it wasn't for the imagination of us as a people, there would be no Ifa spiritual system. There would be no Santeria. There would be no Lakumi. We wouldn't be able to do what it is that we do now if we didn't have the imagination. Having the imagination is part of the survival system of a culture. Our ancestors were very imaginative. That's why how you got Lakumi and Santeria from Ifa. It's the same system, but when it went to Cuba and Brazil, it took on different manifestation, and that was due to the imagination of the people. It's part of the survival strategy. Technology didn't help us survive. What happened with voodoo? Voodoo, all of that all becomes part of our survival strategy. For instance, as an example, we look at the Nation of Islam. They have a story of Yaqub, the big-headed scientist. You ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
That is part of the Nation of Islam mythos. A lot of people outside that circle think it's nonsense. It's about what I think they call 24 elders or 24 scientists that make up what's known as the Elohim or the Godhead. Mm-hmm. Now, Yaqub was one of those 24 scientists that for whatever reason disagreed or showed some type of dissatisfaction with what was going on with the 24 scientists, and it must have been bad because he just said he was so mad that he said, I'm going to create a wicked race of devils. And I'm just like, okay, that's serious, that your get back was to create evil. Doesn't matter if we believe it or not, doesn't matter if it's true or not, ironically. So he took, and they say he manipulated germs from the black man and grafted from the black man the brown man. Grafted from the brown man. What was that? The red man after that Armaka?
Yeah.
Then the yellow man. Mm-hmm. Then the yellow man, and then the white man. I don't want to jack up their story, but that is their story. So now, outside in the rest of the world, those people who are scientifically inclined, those who are part of other religious structures, they say that sounds childish. That's crazy. It's unscientific. That's not helping the people. We need science to help the people. We need economics to help the people. And check this out. I would say that thing that they made up has done more for black folks than anything that we've done, anything that the so-called conscious community done, that very myth that I just said. The Nation of Islam at their weakest is still stronger than us at our strongest. And anything the conscious community done at their best, all coming from something that's so-called made up. And what is the takeaway from that story? The takeaway from that metaphor is no one outside your circle can be the final authority for what works for you. If it works for you, keep doing it. And all that's because cats got bored. They don't know what's the next level to take what it is that they're into. So we're talking about acedia. Acedia, once again, is spiritual fatigue. So we in its many effects, it manifests as boredom. How boredom could undermine your success. Boredom could undermine sacredness. Boredom is the foundation to isfet. What did the Christians used to teach us? They said the idle mind is the devil's playground. So there's some some relevance to that. So see, when you come here to this platform, we don't necessarily deal with history. Others deal with history, and I totally support it. Others deal with economics, I totally support it. Others, like our Morris brothers, deal with law. I totally support it. But when you come here, when you come at least learn from me, you're going to learn spirituality. You're going to learn metaphysics. Now, for those who don't know what metaphysics is a philosophy. Philosophy comes from the Greek word philo and sophia, the love of wisdom. I teach here that wisdom is superior decision-making ability. I'm in love with the idea of superior decision-making ability. That's powerful. So metaphysics is a philosophy of studying primary causes. History, to keep discussing history, is not going to shift and change and transform us in any significant way. Our behavior towards one another will shift us in a significant way, because I'm into metaphysics and I'm into the wisdom text. When you hear me, you're going to hear what the ancestors possibly thought about this and what can we glean from the ancestors about that. Outside of that, I don't like to hear about history. I don't care about history, only in the fact to how it's relevant to what we're going through now. So people could talk about economics. They said, forget about the history and all that blackety black stuff. We need to get our money together. And I say, if the consciousness of the people that have the money is not right, you're not going to do the right thing with the money. If people talk about law becomes empty talk if we have no code of honor amongst each other. So if we're not going to stick to the law or stick to the code, then we can't talk law. So it's all going to still come down to your behavior. So when we're talking about metaphysics, the study of primary causes. So we go back to ideas. So we go back to the mind. So your behavior affects your actions. Your actions eventually causes effects. So it's going to come down to your actions, your reactions, your interactions, and how you counteract. That is what the foundation of what behavior is. The actions, reactions, interaction, and what was the last one? Counteraction. So everything is gonna come, if those things are not right, nothing that you do is you're not gonna prosper with anything if you have no act right amongst you. For instance, so I know my power. So if I walk in a room, I could change the molecules in the room. The energy is going to shift, change, and transform when I walk in the room. It's two things that's going to happen. People are either going to be inspired or certain people are going to be intimidated. And that's a fact. Now, how do we deal with the circumstance? So I don't want people to be intimidated. Because that intimidation eventually leads to envy. It leads to fear. It can lead to jealousy. I don't want people to be envious or jealous. I don't want people to be fearful of me. So how I interact is going to determine how I counteract that. So if I walk in a room and I'm just like, yeah, bow down, the king is here, then that's going to make people feel a certain way. How do I change that? Through my interaction. I could walk into the room and some people might want to bow, and that's cool. But what do? I work the room. I go around, shake hands, kiss babies, make jokes with people, make a solid connection with people, and that lessens the chance of jealousy, envy, or fear. And sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I might crack a joke or something that people don't appreciate, and they mad at me, and I can be like, hey, I was just playing. Like, no, you really meant it, and such and such. Sometimes, we experience that before. Can't make a joke with certain people, but I say 9 out of 10 times I get it right. And if I didn't get it right, you all wouldn't be here right now listening to me now, and I wouldn't be getting the blessings of my elders if I didn't get it right. So how you act, interact, and so forth is going to come down to accountability. So we have to reintroduce that word and that word back into our vocabulary in our community. Accountability is another form of ma'at. What you put out, you get back. So no one is innocent. We go through this before. No one is innocent in any situation. If you're in a situation and things is happening to you, it's because you put out a certain energy consciously or unconsciously. We have to put that out there, consciously or unconsciously. So when people are playing the victim, they don't ever consider the subconscious signals that's going out. And the subconscious signals is oftentimes more powerful than your conscious signals going on. That's why a lot of rituals and things that people are trying to do don't work, because their subconscious is doubting and they're trying to believe and they're trying to affirm with their conscious mind. So you have to be able to access and plant seeds in your subconscious mind if you want positive shifts, changes, and transformation. So with this accountability, I noticed that people have poor emotional responses to the idea of accountability. In the times that we're living in, I say femininity is dominating, because people are in their feelings. When we talk about femininity, we're talking about receptivity. We're not always talking about women. And when we're talking about masculinity, we're talking about assertion. We're not always talking about the male, even though the primary avatar of the masculine is a male or a man, and the primary avatar of the feminine is a female or a woman. But the male has feminine inside of him, as the female has feminine inside of her. So now the masculine is here to establish law and order. Now, when I say that word law and order, some people are triggered by that. The masculine is here to establish and enforce law and order. Some people are triggered and they start getting into their feelings. They feel a sort of way about it. Remember, the feelings are feminine. We can't be averse to law and order. Look at the irony in it. So if the masculine establishes and enforces law and order, why would you negatively respond to that? Because in our culture, we have a deity called law and order, and that deity is called Ma'at, and that deity is feminine. The irony in it. So the masculine is to serve the feminine. I repeat, the masculine is to serve the feminine. I know the women like that. That's right. Serve the feminine. And the feminine is to yield to the masculine. I repeat, the feminine is to yield to the masculine. So the feminine is to use persuasion to the wisdom of the law. Understand? So now, what's happening in our community with all the feelings, the high emotions, men and women are weaponizing these principles against one another. So you have men saying, I'm not going to serve you till you show me evidence that you're going to yield to me. And the women are like, I'm not going to yield to you till you show me evidence that you serve me. And then we get this stalemate. And I say, if you're having this conversation that's causing conflict, or you have to coerce, or there's compulsion in it as a man, then you're not being the divine masculine at that point. And as a woman, if you're having this conversation with conflict, then you need to coerce and all this compulsion in it, then you're not being a divine feminine. So both men and women have to check themselves. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity of growing up with a strong father figure in the house. When the proper masculine shows up on the scene, there is no resistance. You get quiet. The feminine yields to the masculine. Even if the masculine might be wrong, there's yielding in that. And same as if you were if you had the opportunity to see the divine feminine, you'll see the most masculine man yield to the divine feminine. I don't know if y'all remember, like 50 years ago, if a man had a hat on and a woman would come by, he would take his hat off. that's yielding. Some relationships get jeopardized when the divine feminine comes into a place. You can have the most masculine man, and the divine feminine got men turning their heads and opening doors, and their wife be like, "Hey, what you doing? You don't do that for me." And I would say in that situation, the wife will have to check her femininity, that to the point where the divine feminine and someone else caught their man's attention, and vice versa. A man could become very insecure. A divine masculine shows itself on the scene and is turning his wife's head, and she's giggly and googly eyed and amicable and yielding to the divine masculine. So the man would then have to check himself. Are you fit? Are you smelling good? Are you representing that divine masculine? As simple as that. People are trying to complicate it when it's really just as simple as that. Where am I going with this? When I'm going to the point where people are having poor emotional responses to order.
Cool.
So we need to establish divine order, but if everybody gets to feel some sort of way about it, it's hard to divine order. So in African cultures, we tend to try to make our rules and our law and order based off of natural principles. So, for instance, gravity is a law of nature, right? And it doesn't matter how you feel about gravity, it's a law of nature.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have a discussion about it if I take you to the roof and blindfold you, and then I want to hear your philosophy about how you feel about, or you disagree about gravity as you get pushed over. Certain laws are just laws. I could take you out into the desert in 120-degree weather, and you could talk about, I'm not going to acknowledge the sun because I like the darkness better, and I ain't going to cover myself up. And then we'll see that sun burn you up. Same place, stay there at night, and you be like, well, I ain't going to acknowledge that. I got enough heat from the daytime to sustain me through the night. In the middle of the desert, you're going to freeze. So certain laws don't matter. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. So everyone is in their feelings. I ain't gonna say everyone is in their feelings. Feelings are high. So the feminine is very high. So what I'm alluding to is people, human beings, have an aversion to anything that requires commitment and effort. I repeat, human beings have an aversion to anything that requires commitment and effort. We look at diet. People get off their diet because their diet is boring. Remember, we're supposed to be talking about acedia. So people don't like commitment and effort because it gets boring. So people don't stick to their diet because their diet gets boring. People don't stay working out because working out gets boring. You know it's good for you, but yet it's still boring to you. People don't join organizations and stay with organizations because it requires commitment and effort. Marriages are suffering. Where they say the divorce rate is like 80%. Marriages are suffering because it requires commitment and effort. So we really have to examine ourselves when it comes to this so-called boredom thing. Is it real? I would say, from based off of my research, it's fairly a new phenomenon. We have so much stimulation going on in our society when things are going so fast. And once I say when you're told to slow it down, then the idea of commitment and effort becomes more obvious. And we like I said, we avoid commitment and effort. So there has to be some spiritual maturity on your behalf to endure through the so-called boredom until you get to the prize. When you look at people like Baba Heru's on here. Like, Baba doesn't have nobody outside entertaining him to keep him as passionate about the legacy as he is about the legacy. Same with Infidisi. There's nobody, he hasn't made nobody responsible outside of himself to keep him motivated about who he is and what it is that he signed up for. You look at Jabari. He doesn't need anyone outside of himself to remind him or to keep him entertained about what it is that he's supposed to do. So when you look at us up here, no one outside of ourselves has to remind us, is charged to remind us to do what it is that we do. When I get anything close to bored, that's a good thing. I repeat, when I or we get anything close to board, that's a good thing for the legacy. That means the legacy is about to get enriched and enhanced. I remember having very tense conversations with Infidisi way back 30 something years ago. It was about prayer, about where's our prayers or what are our prayers. And it was a tense conversation. And he said, you do it, you research it. And that brought about the art of prayer. So that brought about my contribution to the legacy that now we got a whole community of people venerating the ancestors and the deity 4 times a day, like our ancestors did. What else? Then the next time I came close to boredom, we created the Divine Council, our Saru, the priesthood, almost 20 years ago. Then after that, the Saruj, the coming together of the temples. Then after that, what do we call the royal court? And after that, the new Radiant CD. After that, the new Ambiance CD, or I say the new Ambiance CD, then a new Radiant CD. You see what I'm saying? Anytime I feel like things are getting redundant, it causes me to go deeper. Anytime we get bored with the communion, me and him put our heads together and we come up with the tightest communions ever. Like when y'all see us both share a communion, that means we both was uninspired. So that uninspired thing causes us to go deeper because we have to always have something relevant to say. So it's never a reason to go away, it's to go deeper within. And how do we do that? We do that through studying the myths, studying the mythos, doing the Ketsu. Doing the Ketsu is the ritual. So between studying the mythos and doing the ritual, that is the science of, or that is what we call mysticism. So in contrast to the scholars, we don't just understand it, we then experience it. It is through our experience with the legacy that renews us. So going back to the point, we avoid anything that requires commitment and effort. We avoid anything that requires commitment and effort. So you all or people have to find that thing inside themselves and deal with that thing because it represents a spiritual immaturity. We do what our ancestors do. We don't do it to entertain ourselves. It's not required to be entertaining. So you have to be careful of that disengagement because that disengagement leads to apathy. And that apathy leads to pessimism. The pessimism leads to sarcasm. The sarcasm then starts getting you to question the relevancy of the thing that you're doing. And it causes you to conveniently forget that the thing that you're doing and the thing that you're a part of shifted and changed and transformed your life for the better. You just got used to it. So maybe when you get bored, maybe you need to find a way to inspire someone else. As you inspire someone else, it increases it gives you the opportunity to go deeper in what it is that we all do, or what it is that we all know. What did it say? Sometimes you don't know what you know until you try to teach someone else it. There's a saying, it says sometimes too many choices can prevent us from making wise choices. What is that saying? In order to quell spiritual boredom, sometimes you need time away, and sometimes you need variety. But the downside is sometimes too many choices prevents us from making wise choices. Marinate on that. Sometimes too many choices prevent us from making wise choices. So us as a people, since slavery, it's almost like we've promised never to be disciplined again. We've what's the word? Equated discipline with slavery. So we buck anything that's requiring commitment and effort. And we're almost like always throwing a tantrum about having choices. I want to have the choice to do something or not do it. There's always choices, but do you make the wise choice? Do you have wisdom? For instance, the metaphor of a child in a candy store with a little bit of money. A child in a candy store with a little bit of money, he has so many choices. So many choices then agitate his mind. So many choices then cause the child not to make any wise choice, because if the child was wise, he'd be like, wow, we got a candy store in our neighborhood. I'm just gonna buy these 2 pieces and I'll come back later to get some more later. But what happens, the kid wilds out and spends all his money in the candy store. And we got to go flesh out the metaphor. He's setting himself up for diabetes later on in life too. So you see what I'm saying? Too many choices sometimes it doesn't equate to the wisest choices. Another example, a buffet. Do they still do buffets? Is buffets still around?
Not since
as popular.
COVID.
No,
Okay. Yeah.
they still around.
They are.
No, all the buffets closed because of the pandemic. They should have been closed because of the pandemic.
There was one yesterday.
Yeah, he did one yesterday. So once again, a more appropriate example. Sometimes more choices don't lead to wise choices. When people go to a buffet, they go purposely with the intention to eat at least 3 plates and dessert. So, like, remember, as spiritualists, you only supposed to eat to take to take an edge off your hunger. You still supposed to have your next meal. You're supposed to be contemplating your next meal, but you never supposed to eat to have that full belly. So when you go to a buffet, you be like, you looking 3 meals deep. So now that's gluttony. Once again, setting up for diabetes, obesity, and all of that later on. So having more choices doesn't always equate to the wisest choice. So we had spoke about variety and we spoke about time. Sometimes people need some time away. Sometimes people need variety, but we just discuss how variety, there's a downside to variety. And what about time? Sometimes people need to step away from things in order to appreciate what it is. So as adults, you have to go within yourself to realize that the way we do things here in the legacy, we already factored in variety. We already factored in time. Like, what you talk about, Mr. Drummond? Sometimes that time away, people wind up spiraling into the lowest depths of their life and they come back broken down and they need to come back to be restored. Sometimes you need to go away to realize that your most productive time is when you were with the family, with the tribe, with the nation, being productive. But how do we deal? What are we talking about? I said time. We only do communion once every other Sunday because I respected the need for your own time and your own space. So you got a whole weekend to do what it is that you want to do because I'm giving you choice. And then that other week, you need to have it in the building. So now I'm looking at the numbers. The numbers always fluctuate. How is it that we're always here, but the community is not always here because everybody abuses choice. So they decide this thing called boredom is sometimes we get in this thing that the fun or something interesting is somewhere else. And we're always just open to where the fun and the interest is somewhere else. And what social media has done, it has allowed us to think you could do everything on your own terms. So if anybody establishes the law and order, then you're having a poor emotional response to it. So since we're live, they'd be like, I'll just watch the recording later, right? I'll just watch the recording later. Now imagine if me and him had that attitude. Be like, hey man, I don't feel like doing communion. Let's just record it first and have them watch a recording of us later. Y'all will probably feel some sort of way. Then eventually, several months down the line, nobody will be on because they'd be like, them cats ain't even really there. They up here sending such and such. So it's the same thing. So we gave you time, but yet when it's time to give it back to the Neteru and our ancestors, you still are struggling with prioritizing that because our people have an aversion for commitment and effort. It takes commitment and effort to do what's important to you. Now, variety, nobody could complain that the Kemetic tradition doesn't have a variety. No one could complain that any of the African traditions doesn't have a variety. We have a variety of Neteru. There's no redundancy. It could be no such thing as redundancy. It's not like when you go to the churches, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Go to the mosque, Muhammad, Muhammad, Muhammad Rasulullah. And when you come here, it's not just rah, rah, rah. We got Ma'at, we got Waset, Nebbit, Het. Every such amount of communions, then we break it up with a holiday, a holy day observance, which causes us to participate in different ways. So the variety is there, the time is there. Now, when people come to a legacy like this, When you were on the outside, you had dreams of being on the inside. Then you came, you got initiated, now you're on the inside and you looking at the front door as though being on the outside was better. When you was on the outside, you swore, hey, this world don't understand me. I'm different. I need to find my tribe. Then you get with the tribe, then you acting like, I ain't one of them. I'm still different. So when you come to the legacy, you're coming for self. And understand this, becoming to the legacy, whether it's the Kemetic legacy or any of our other African sister legacies, that is the most revolutionary thing that you could do. Everyone's talking about revolution, black, red, and green. The most revolutionary thing you could do is to totally reclaim your culture, reclaim your name, reclaim the dress. So look at the conversation going on in the community when they're calling us clowns. It's like, nah, we revolute. This is what revolutionary means. Y'all still hiding and playing and wearing the oppressor's clothes. We wear that sometimes too, but when we're amongst ourselves, we should be proud in our regalia. And not under, we shouldn't be in disguise when we're supposed to be authentic, when we have the space to be authentic. So here we are, look at us right here. We're not even out in the world yet. Me and him at still dress up for communion because this is sacred. So you start with yourself, and then after you get in, that interest in self is supposed to shift to, so you know that you're part of something that's greater than yourself. So it shifts from self to what's beneficial to some of the others. Because at the same time, those others are looking out for what's beneficial to you also. So you have to transcend from self to others to become part of something that's bigger than you. Mm-hmm. So once again, people avoid commitment and effort. So because of that, people tried to change what marriage represented. Marriage that had nothing to do with love. Marriage was about establishing family and community. Once we supplanted that with this concept of love and romanticism, we've been on the decline since. That's why it's up to 80%, because people are married out of that illusion of love, which I don't even believe those people were ever in love. They were lusting. They had authentic interest mixed with lust. So we talking about a chemical imbalance. They made a decision based off a chemical imbalance. While before, your parents and your elders made arrangements to make sure you had the proper genetic resonance with the next family or with the next tribe to bring forth positive energy and positive individuals, enlightened individuals back in the world. We started worrying about superficial things. But Ma, she ugly. But Pa, he ugly. You got to have faith in your leadership, your parents, your elders, that they wouldn't purposely set you up with anybody that's ugly, because those things get influenced by things outside our world. You would, if the elders and the priests divine and said you corresponded with this person perfectly, it might not feel like that on the surface, but it's divine. Remember, it's divine order. It's symmetry there. So you would find that love if you would open up yourself to that process and not let other people and other cultures influence you on how you approach your culture. People are coming to the temple for personal enlightenment. That's not what a temple or legacy is about. Marriage is for establishing family and community. Temples are there for the spiritual direction of the community. The temples and the institution give you the tools so you can find your own personal enlightenment. That's your individuality that you're looking so much for. You're giving you the tools to find your own spiritual enlightenment. It is not the duty of the teacher to enlighten you. That's why there's all this philosophy about enlightenment in the community, whether it's coming from a Hindu, whether it's coming from yoga, Buddhism. Where's all the enlightened people? These systems are not produced. You would think it should be a nation of enlightened people, but it's not, because people are not using the tools for their own personal enlightenment. They're making it the responsibility of the teacher to personally enlighten them, and making the responsibility of the scribes or the scholars. Like, no, you were, at this point, you were given a plethora of information, a plethora of ceremonies to reach your personal enlightenment. So all of this to say, the emphasis of what we're talking about is Suruj Tawi, which is restoring of the land, which is the healing of the land. So when they say the land, whenever you hear a culture of people talk about the land, they're talking about the world as they know it. So the ancient Kemites, They saw Kemet as a reflection of the whole world. So when we say restoring of the lands, we're talking about restoring of the world. So this is important simply because it's our contribution towards healing of the nation. So when we say Saruj Tawi, that's synonymous with healing of the nation. That's why I said he or she who struggles together with the people of their town shall rejoice in victory with them. Now, in the Hermetica, it says, Atum had said, the universe will not be complete until humankind has played their part. So essentially, we're talking about how to get in where you fit in. So I said this is going to be a two-parter. So I broke down, or I introduced to you acedia, spiritual fatigue, and how its many manifestations undermine the greatness of this legacy as well as our forward success. So it's hard to move forward if you got a bunch of bored people that's almost looking for excuses not to commit and not to give effort. So the next communion, we're going to get into investigating some of the things that we could do to maybe renew or invigorate our interest back into the idea of sacredness and what it is that we do. So in the spirit of not giving too much information and making sure people have something to walk away with so they can prepare themselves for the solution for the next communion, I'll end on that note.
Tuanete. Yes. Dua for that message, Nasud. I would like to again thank everyone for joining us today. And to get the second part of this message, please join us in 2 weeks on Sunday, May 16th. For our next regularly scheduled communion, we will again be dual casting on YouTube and Facebook Live. I want to thank you all for your donations, the funds that you send to us to assist us in growing and continuing the work that we do in the Temple of Anu. Donations can be sent by Cash App to $Temple of Anu, as well as to PayPal using our email address, templeofanu@gmail.com. We understand your donations to be a reflection of the divine reciprocity for the energy and the teachings that you receive, giving back to us in turn, and part of, again, what helps us to keep the temple going and to keep us moving forward and growing. For those of you who cannot send donations at this time, never fear. We will, again, be here anyway, and we welcome you to join us every communion, again, on Facebook and YouTube Live. We look forward to sharing this space with you all again in 2 very short weeks. And until then, be well. Shamim Matep, everybody.
Shamim Matep.